When billionaire real estate mogul Richard Kane returned home early from a 2-month business trip abroad, he expected the usual grand welcome, the gates opening smoothly, the manicured lawns glowing under the California sun, and the staff lining up neatly in their uniforms. But instead, the mansion felt strangely quiet. The fountain wasn't running, the garden looked slightly unkempt, and the sound of faint murmurs came from inside the living room. With his suitcase in hand, he stepped through the front door, expecting his daughter Emily to come running into his arms as she always did. Instead, what he saw stopped him dead in his tracks. There, on her knees, wearing a plain maid's uniform with a bucket beside her, was Emily, his only daughter, the same girl who had grown up surrounded by everything money could buy. Her hair was tied back messily, sweat dripped from her forehead, and her delicate hands were raw from scrubbing the marble floor. Richard blinked, thinking his eyes were deceiving him. "Emily," he said slowly, disbelief lacing his voice. She froze, her sponge slipping from her hand. Every staff member around her went silent, their faces turning pale. "What in God's name is going on here?" Richard thundered, his deep voice echoing through the grand hallway. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Lorna, stumbled forward, trying to explain, but Richard's sharp gaze silenced her instantly. He turned back to his daughter, his heart pounding. "Emily, why are you dressed like this? Why are you cleaning the floor in my house?" She didn't speak at first. Her lips trembled, her eyes welled up, and then she slowly stood, wiping her wet hands on her apron. "Dad, I can explain," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Richard was too stunned to move. Just 2 months ago, he had kissed her goodbye before flying to Dubai to close a multi-billion-dollar real estate deal. She had promised to stay out of trouble, to focus on her charity projects and online college classes. He had left her in the care of his trusted house staff, confident that his daughter was safe and happy. Yet now, she looked like a maid who hadn't been paid in weeks. "Emily, talk to me," he demanded again, frustration and fear mixing in his tone. She took a deep breath, tears finally streaming down her cheeks. "Dad, I had to do it," she said shakily. "I had to see what was happening here when you weren't around. I couldn't tell you because I knew you wouldn't believe me." Richard's brows furrowed. "See what? What are you talking about?" She hesitated, glancing nervously at the staff standing around them, all pretending to look busy but secretly terrified. "They've been stealing from you, Dad," she finally said. "Not just money, furniture, electronics, even your clients' files. And they've been treating the junior workers like slaves. When I tried to report it to Mrs. Lorna, she said I was just a spoiled kid who didn't know how the real world worked. So I decided to prove it myself." For a long moment, Richard couldn't speak. The words didn't make sense. Emily, his daughter, working undercover as a maid, in his own mansion. He stared at her, his heart heavy with confusion. "You mean to tell me you've been living here like this for weeks?" he asked slowly. Emily nodded. "Yes. I changed my name to Emma, the new maid. They didn't recognize me at first because I dressed differently and wore glasses. I slept in the servants' quarters, ate the same food they did, and worked every day from morning till night. Dad, you have no idea how bad it's been here." Richard looked around, his jaw tightening. He suddenly noticed the nervous glances, the trembling hands of the workers, the faint smell of bleach trying to cover up something deeper. The mansion he thought was his pride now felt like a stranger's home. His voice dropped to a cold, controlled tone. "Everyone, out. Now." The staff hesitated for a split second, then hurried out of the room, leaving father and daughter alone in a tense silence. He walked closer to Emily, his usually commanding presence softening as he took in the exhaustion on her face. "You should never have done this, Emily," he said quietly. "You could have been hurt." She shook her head, her chin trembling. "I couldn't just watch, Dad. I overheard the gardeners talking about fake invoices, and I saw receipts for supplies that were never bought. They were lying to you and bullying people. I wanted to make it stop." Richard exhaled, rubbing his temples. He felt a surge of guilt he couldn't ignore. For years, he'd been too busy expanding his empire, trusting others to manage his home while assuming everything was perfect. But now, standing before his daughter, dressed like a maid, with tired eyes and a broken voice, he realized how blind he had been. "Emily," he said softly, "whatever is going on here, we are going to fix it. But from now on, you tell me everything. No more secrets." She nodded, sniffling, her relief visible through her tears. As Richard wrapped his arms around her, his mind raced with questions. Who could he trust? How deep did this betrayal go? And most importantly, what had his daughter uncovered that was so bad she had to risk everything to prove it? He didn't have the answers yet, but one thing was certain: his perfect home was no longer what it seemed, and the truth Emily had uncovered was only the beginning. Richard stood in the center of his massive living room, unable to process what he had just heard. His daughter, Emily, the same girl who grew up with everything handed to her, had spent weeks scrubbing floors, washing dishes, and living like a maid just to expose the rot inside his mansion. He wanted to be angry, but the pride in his chest mixed with a deep sting of guilt. How could he have missed all this happening under his own roof? How could people he trusted so deeply betray him this way? Emily stood quietly, her eyes red but steady, waiting for him to say something. "Show me," he finally said. "Show me everything you found." That night, while the house was asleep, Emily led her father to the small servants' quarters at the back of the mansion. Her tiny room was nothing like the luxurious suite she had grown up in. It was cramped, with peeling paint, a single mattress on the floor, and a dim light bulb that flickered above their heads. On a small table sat her phone, a stack of handwritten notes, and a few USB drives. "I recorded everything," she said, handing him her phone. Richard tapped play. The screen lit up with shaky footage showing one of his senior staff, the head accountant, counting bundles of cash and laughing with another worker about splitting the bonus. In another clip, the head housekeeper threatened a young maid who had complained about unpaid wages, warning her that she would be fired if she ever spoke again. Richard's face darkened as each video played. "This can't be happening," he muttered. But Emily wasn't finished. She pulled out a drawer and brought out a small ledger she had found hidden behind the pantry. "Look at this," she said. The book contained fake invoices with exaggerated numbers, all approved with forged signatures. His own name appeared at the bottom of several documents, forged so well that even he would have believed they were real. His empire had been bleeding money from within, right under his nose. The next morning, Richard acted as if nothing had happened. He went about his routine, greeted the staff, and made a show of checking on small details: the garden, the vehicles, the kitchen. But inside, he was burning. Emily stayed close by, pretending to return to her maid duties while secretly watching everyone. Richard started cross-checking records from his office and comparing them to Emily's evidence. Within hours, he discovered that nearly $40,000 had disappeared from household accounts in just 2 months. Even worse, several expensive jewelry pieces belonging to his late wife had been swapped with imitations. Richard's heart sank as he pieced everything together. The people he had treated like family, who ate at his table, who he trusted with his home and his daughter's safety, had turned into thieves. He began to see what Emily had seen: how the junior workers flinched when certain supervisors entered the room, how nervous glances were exchanged when he asked about missing items, how silence filled the air whenever his name came up. Emily's voice broke through his thoughts. "Dad, you don't have to say anything right now. I know it's hard to believe. But this is why I did it. They treated me like I was nothing. They made me clean bathrooms and mop floors because they didn't recognize me. I wanted to quit, but when I saw how they treated the others, I couldn't walk away." Richard looked at her, speechless. The strength in her eyes reminded him so much of her late mother, brave, selfless, and unafraid of standing up for what was right. He reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did the right thing, Emily. I'm the one who failed. I trusted the wrong people." But even as he said it, a cold anger simmered beneath his calm exterior. He wasn't just going to fire them, he was going to expose every single one of them. Over the next few days, he began gathering official proof. He involved his private investigator discreetly, telling no one except Emily. The investigator confirmed that several staff had opened fake vendor accounts and were funneling money from his estate budgets into their personal accounts. Some of them were even blackmailing junior workers, forcing them to stay silent in exchange for job security. Every discovery felt like another dagger to Richard's pride. His empire, which he had built on integrity and hard work, was being eaten alive by corruption within his own home. At night, he would sit alone in his study, staring at the security footage Emily had helped him access. He saw moments that made his blood boil: the driver sneaking out jewelry boxes, the accountant slipping envelopes into his jacket, and the head housekeeper pocketing wads of cash meant for food supplies. He clenched his fist, knowing the reckoning was coming. Emily would often find him there, exhausted but determined, and whisper, "We're almost there, Dad." By the end of the week, Richard had enough evidence to confront them all. His love for his daughter had turned into a new kind of respect, the kind reserved for people who choose courage over comfort. The more he uncovered, the more he realized that Emily had done something extraordinary. She had seen the truth he was too busy to see, and she had risked her comfort, her safety, even her relationship with him, to bring it to light. He promised himself that when this was over, he would make sure she knew just how proud he truly was. But before that, justice had to be served, and the people who had turned his home into a web of deceit were about to face the billionaire they had underestimated. The next morning, Richard woke before sunrise. He stood by the tall glass windows of his study, watching the dawn light stretch across his sprawling estate. His heart was steady now, no longer filled with confusion but with a cold, deliberate focus. Today was the day everything would come to light. He had spent the night reviewing the files, the videos, and the audio recordings Emily had collected. Every lie, every stolen dollar, every act of cruelty was now laid bare. The same staff who had smiled in his face, who had toasted to his success, were about to face the truth they thought would never be revealed. By 8 o'clock, the mansion was alive with nervous chatter. Richard had summoned every member of the household, from the head accountant to the gardeners, to gather in the grand hall. No one knew why, but the tension in the air was suffocating. When he finally entered, dressed sharply in a black suit, silence fell instantly. His presence alone demanded respect, but that morning, there was something different about him, something colder, more dangerous. Emily stood quietly by his side, no longer wearing her maid uniform but a simple white blouse and jeans. Her eyes were calm, but her heart raced. Richard began without preamble. "For years, I have trusted this home to you," he said, his deep voice echoing through the marble hall. "You were not just employees, you were family. But somewhere along the line, that trust was broken. Today, we uncover the truth." He reached for the remote on the table beside him and pressed play. The massive screen behind him flickered to life, showing the first video Emily had recorded, the accountant stuffing cash into a drawer labeled "maintenance budget." Gasps erupted across the hall. The next clip showed the head housekeeper pocketing jewelry, followed by another where the driver met a stranger at the gate, exchanging envelopes. The evidence was undeniable. The guilty ones began to tremble, their faces pale. The accountant stepped forward, stammering, "Sir, I can explain," but Richard raised a hand, silencing him. "You've done enough explaining in these fake invoices," he said sharply. He turned to Mrs. Lorna, the head housekeeper, who stood frozen in place. "You called my daughter a spoiled child, didn't you?" he asked coldly. "You made her clean floors to earn her place while you stole from the same home that fed you. Look at her now, she's the only one in this room who showed true loyalty." Mrs. Lorna burst into tears, falling to her knees, but Richard didn't flinch. "Save your tears," he said. "You'll need them where you're going." At that moment, the sound of police sirens echoed outside. 2 patrol cars pulled up at the front of the mansion. Officers entered, their presence sending waves of panic through the crowd. Richard handed over a folder containing all the evidence. "These are the people you're looking for," he said firmly. The officers began leading the guilty staff away one by one, their protests drowned out by the heavy silence. Emily watched, Her emotions tangled between relief and disbelief. It was finally over. When the hall was empty, Richard turned to his daughter. The hardness in his face softened for the first time that morning. "Emily," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "You did what even my security team couldn't. You saw the truth when I was too blind to look. You've shown me what real strength and integrity look like." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she stepped forward, unsure of what to say. He smiled faintly and pulled her into an embrace. "I'm proud of you," he whispered. "More than you'll ever know." He released her and looked around the now quiet mansion, the same place that had once been tainted by deceit. "From this day forward," he continued, "you're not just my daughter. You're my partner, my new personal assistant. You'll oversee all my properties, all my staff. You've earned it, not because of your last name, but because of your courage." Emily gasped, shaking her head. "Dad, I didn't do it for a position," she said softly. "I just wanted to protect you." Richard smiled again, this time with deep pride. "And that's exactly why you deserve it." News of the arrest spread quickly across the estate and beyond. The lawyer workers who had endured in silence were finally treated with respect and given raises. The toxic culture that had festered in the mansion was replaced by transparency and accountability, all because one young woman dared to act when everyone else stayed quiet. Richard implemented new systems to monitor finances and staff performance, but he gave Emily the authority to oversee it all. Weeks later, as the mansion returned to its peaceful rhythm, Richard often found himself watching his daughter from afar, confident, composed, and stronger than ever. He realized she had inherited not just his ambition but his late wife's heart and sense of justice. Emily had taught him something that no business deal ever could, that loyalty isn't bought with money but earned through integrity and courage. From that day on, Richard Kane wasn't just known as the billionaire real estate mogul. He was known as the father of the woman who risked everything to protect what truly mattered, their family's honor.
Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe for more teachable and inspiring folk tales by FE.